Thank you, Tom. Let me start with basics. So today in 2023, there are 8 billion people on this planet. And well, the current number is that we speak just over 7,000 languages. As you've heard, if the trend continues, by the end of this century, we'll have 11 billion people living on the planet. But probably only about half of the languages will be spoken. And that's the positive prognosis. The more negative one is that it will be 11 billion people speaking, but only 20% of languages which are known today. This is clearly a troubling fact. It takes millennia to develop something, and it can be lost within a generation. Knowledge which is not accessible in other languages, which is not translated, medicinal knowledge, botanical knowledge, can be lost irretrievably. This is the reason why also we do the work we do, like everyone here, motivated by preserving this knowledge. So far we've been working on 31 different writing scripts. Me saying like we as a company, Typotech, that I'm running, and there's many people involved in this that don't have time to explain. This sounds like a dream for big global companies, that there could be universal design to support many languages all in one. This technically could be one font that supports it. And I'm going to talk about the fact that people don't speak Devanagari, people don't speak Cyrillic, people don't speak Latin. They speak Marathi, they speak Serbian, they speak Czech. And the requirements of each of the languages are very different. And that's why it's very hard to accommodate these different, sometimes conflicting requirements into one built fonts. So I'll be talking about the fact that, yes, we're working on scripts, but people speak in languages, and it's important to understand the readers. And this is what our work is about. I'll briefly run through one thing to make a point. We published last month, a project which was based on handwriting, Latin only, but you can see that how we learn to write has an impact how we perceive text. And as there are different educational models for writing across different countries and in different times, different generations, people write differently. So we can see that there are different readers who write the same letter in different ways, and we made a font that called Dash that localizes it. So if the text is language tagged, it will be you will see different versions. So the Czech reader would prefer this different T, which is probably unfamiliar to an English reader, but this is what is favored by it. And now the question is, does it matter? Does this localization matter for us, for people? So we made a survey to answer this, where we present localized versions, familiar versions to one group of readers versus unfamiliar forms, and would ask questions about perceived trustworthiness or friendliness. And we would see statistically that it is significant, and then it does matter. Now the question is, okay, so maybe it matters for handwriting. Does it matter for, if you work with printed type? And I do think that it matters also, so that the same, results can be extrapolated to something else. And I think I'll be talking about this. This is a project we've done also last year, fonts for South Asia, which is, one of the most linguistically diverse places on Earth. Home of 2 billion people, hundreds of languages, dozens of different writing scripts. We don't even know how many languages are spoken there. I don't have time to get into it. If you want to see, there's a documentary about the process of producing this work, and again, complexities which we have to face doing it. But I'll focus on one example, and that is Devanagari, which is often mentioned as resolved, boring script that work has been done, and see that it is not. It's still, there's a lot of challenges with everything. If you look closely at anything, even Latin, there's still a lot of knowledge to be acquired. So when we look at Devanagari, we can see that even if you look at 20th century books, we come across all these different forms which appear, and we don't know why they're different. Are they just stylistic variations, or is that regional variations? Is it different demographics? Is it different archaic forms? There isn't reliable knowledge to answer about what these differences are. Should they be encoded differently or not? So the only way to answer it is that you do your homework, that we do research. So we would go and do on-location research, interview about 400 people in Marathi-speaking area, in Nepali-speaking area, in Hindi-speaking area, to try to understand how recognized these different forms are today, in order to understand, what is useful or not. Maybe something is archaic and no longer relevant. What are the preferences of people, and what is, what do people learn to write, and then try to match it with, collect also the, metadata about every reader, so we can understand also, what correlations there are between two different sets of data. And we could see clearly that the age would play a role in the preferences. The place where people, the region would play a significant role, and that's why we would see also that, if you're trying to address readers from the north of India or Nepal, we should use different forms of numerals, for example. We would see that, again, where people learn to write, it does have, indicates preferences, what shapes are preferred or expected to be served. We would also see that there would be generational differences. Here we can see, like in this fact, that this particular letter La, it is preferred, but only for all the Marathi readers above 40 years old, while other younger readers would prefer, the standard version, which is used for Hindi primarily. We want to build universal fonts, but we cannot ignore, the preferences of readers which are out there. So these would be, like a measuring, the default forms and see how good is the recognition in order to decide what we want to do. Right. We published these results in series of articles and essays. These two pieces, there's a historical essay about evolution of Devanagari script written by Kartik Mali, a researcher that we often work with, based in Bangalore, but he would travel to different libraries across India to collect samples. And the example on the right is the data, pure raw data from the survey, analyzed by Hector Mangas, our cognitive scientist. And based on this, we would write recommendations for type designers. So if you're working with Devanagari, which would be, preferred set of forms for these particular languages. And that helps us also to build the fonts that we want. So this is a font that we offer, not November Devanagari, but with different presets. So if you're trying to address Nepali readers, there will be quite distinct, very different forms compared to the default one, which is for Hindi in general versus Marathi, which previously we were not able to do. So if you're going to answer a question about, do you have a Nepali font? We didn't know if we had if it offered the right forms, and now we're more confident in answering this question. I'll briefly run through a second project, which is an ongoing project that is been going on for a couple of years, and we continue working on it. Kevin King from our team, a researcher and designer, has been putting full attention into this, and I think by now we know that there's 84 indigenous languages across Canada. Languages/dialects, often it is hard to answer what is what, which is different knowledge than what it was when the syllabic script was encoded originally in the late 80s, early 90s, which overlooked some regional languages, which, again, we continue improving, we continue learning new things. But it also means that a few years back, you were not able to, type or there's some sounds missing from some languages face the technical barriers, and which had to be overcome. And we're not doing anything new. This is Nilawak, a lady that we were working with, who invented the characters which were not encoded. And she would say, like, well, for our sounds which are not there, we have the solutions. She would say, like, this is how we write it. So we would work with the community to propose successfully, thank you, the Unicode proposals to complete the syllabics, which was truly community work. Again, I need to credit the Tamalik and Nilawak, the Hadlaris, but also Guy and David from British Columbia, who were helping us with validations of the work. Everything had to be kind of checked and validated multiple times. And only then we could finally design the fonts, which was the first thing we wanted to do. But in order to do this, you need to do a lot of preparations. And we're pleased that especially the novel styles, for example, the cursive styles, which are not very common, they're very warmly accepted. Even the highly decorative styles, they're expanding the typographic palette for community and are much appreciated. Again, I don't have enough time to talk about it, so there's a separate movie, documentary, 15 minutes, that talks about this much more in detail. If all went right, you find this book in your goodie bag, which is our new publication about indigenous languages, where we don't look only at the syllabic, we look also at the romanizations, and I'll talk about it in a bit, where we try to validate the knowledge that we have. So I talked about 84 different languages. We try to have a look like if the forms which were proposed, which are part of Unicode, if they're equivalent, if they are valid for the different reader communities. And we would do this kind of mini surveys. This one is made for the school teachers who teach Natalingmut language to see. Oh, yes, okay, you look in the same slide as me do. And we would see that there are different preferred forms, which we would try to implement in the fonts. So in the same way how in the handwriting people have a distinct preferences, in print it translates very much the same way. And in order to respect this, we need to build different fonts. So one font, it's really hard to make one syllabic font. We address all these communities, but we have to make different builds. Because localized form feature is a powerful thing, but it's not sufficient because these languages are often not even tagged. They cannot be really language tagged. Some of them are more well known, so the Nunavut preferred forms, I think they're documented. Some are not, it's about positions. Some are dramatically changing the shapes, so the Dene, it's a lot more rectangular and higher. And the same goes for romanization of the indigenous languages. They also have quite distinct preferences when it comes from region to region. By the way, another Unicode proposal for the capital version of these letters was accepted and will come out next year, which is great news. I think these are the last missing bits that will allow, again, fully support these languages. One of the nicest things, if you work with type design, we're designing these ogoneks below Polish characters, pushed to the right because that's a logical way to write it. The indigenous languages don't really like that because the accents need to stack and they need to be centered. So we need to create, again, localized positions for this, and they vary from language to language. So we try to document it. Here we see that these ogonek changes form quite dramatically. It's becoming very rectangular, including the glottal stop. Elsewhere, it's replaced by Cydia, so it's a favorite shape. And they prefer not to use this ogonek. Elsewhere, it is flipped again. The question is what to do with this knowledge. This is the gray area. Unicode doesn't really care about this, which it probably shouldn't. But where do we store this knowledge? It is the readers know about it. Type designers should know about it. We put it in books. So in the publication that we gave away, you find it. We put it in a GitHub repository, which is open sourced, and but this, I believe that there's time for something collaborative, where we document this information, in a different way, and hoping that this will trigger discussions about how to do it. Again, the missing piece of how to present fonts which are sensitive to readers, because at the end we're designing things for readers, not for technology. I'll talk about one more project, also published this year, where we worked with Georgian. Georgia, there's no type foundries. Georgia in Caucasus, not here in this country. In the Caucasus. And which people probably know about Georgian script and thinking that it's the only language also used in the country, but Georgia is a curiously multilingual and multi-scriptural. There are a lot of languages used, and what they have in common is that they are, almost all of them are endangered. So this is a list of languages, and they face an uphill battle because there's a persistent fear that promoting smaller languages could fuel linguistic nationalism or even separatism. And there's evidence, there are two breakaway republics, they were which was exploited by Russia. Long story, but that's what makes promoting small languages in Georgia very difficult. I'm going to talk about one story of one language, which was stable for centuries and became endangered in a very short period of time, and to show the roots why this happens and what can be made about this. This is the language Svan in the mountains in Svaneti, beautiful area. And again, it has been stable for a long time until 1987, when a series of avalanches caused, first, people tragically lost lives, but people had to be evacuated. 16,000 people had to be evacuated, and after this, about 2,500 families were resettled elsewhere in Georgia, and within very few years, the language nearly disappeared. What Svan uses, and that's unique for languages that use Georgian script, it uses accented characters. So now Unicode has the mechanics to display this, so there's no problem with encoding. The fonts don't typically support it because this is not so well documented. So we do when we design fonts, we make sure that these forms are presented there. So when we launch the collection of over 30 Georgian fonts, we made sure that they are there. But now, how do you access them? There's no keyboard to type these things. So if you work with keyboards, there's a language that doesn't have any single keyboard, not even third-party keyboard. So that would be a good time to do something. When we worked in Georgia, we organized a series of events, and we often interview people. And the common thing that when we asked about what still needs to be done was the fact that the capital letters for modern Georgian, they've been encoded 7 years ago, I believe. They are used everywhere, but you cannot really type this thing on the keyboard. Again, there's no keyboard that would support them. You can type archaic capital letters for Georgian, which no one uses, but not the modern ones. Often, when we talk about this work, people assume that we get funds from somewhere else. As you know, this is not the case. We do this work because we consider it to be important, and we need to look for novel models, also like how to support it. And one of the things that we launched last month was we presented what we call the Typotech Club. We are commercial type foundry, and we try to connect with people in a way that we present early work, what we do. There are online presentations. There's a lot we can do. But one thing that we've been doing is that you can also support our projects directly. So we're working right now on a Cherokee project with Chris Killen and the Cherokee Nations. By the way, the data is not there. It's 4 days to go, and there's still some push to go. And if you want to see more projects like this for indigenous languages to happen, we appreciate help, and many of you were generously contributed to this already. So we hope that by doing this, we can create different models to engage with languages, which takes time. For example, for the syllabics, something which we estimated that it will take a year or two. Now we've been working for 5 years on this, and we don't really see the end of the work, because once you engage with people and community, it is an ongoing work where we do a series of discoveries that we need to kind of continue working with them. And it is also about building trust, and it's often like the trust is not built on deadlines. So this is that club, and my presentation completed. Thank you.